Three members of the Azteca cartel thought they found an easy target in San Miguel, a quiet American teacher working at the local international school. They didn't realize her father was one of the most decorated Navy SEALs in military history. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. What happened next would expose a billion-dollar trafficking operation, dismantle the largest drug corridor in northern Mexico, and teach the most feared cartel a brutal lesson about underestimating American fathers. The morning sun cast long shadows across the courtyard of San Miguel International School, where Sarah Mitchell stood watching her students practice their conversational English. At 24, she moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had found her calling, guiding young minds toward understanding across cultural and language barriers. The peaceful scene shattered as three black SUVs rolled to a stop outside the school's ornate iron gates. Sarah's hand paused on the textbook she was holding, her attention drawn to the vehicles that seemed to absorb the morning light rather than reflect it. The men who stepped out moved with the practiced precision of predators, their expensive suits failing to conceal the ruthless efficiency beneath. Their leader, a man known only as El Coyote, approached the gate with the casual arrogance of someone used to taking whatever he wanted. Inside the school office, Maria Hernandez watched through the window, her weathered face creasing with concern. Her trembling fingers dialed a number she knew by heart. In a small fishing village on the Texas coast, James Mitchell was teaching his weekend boating safety course when his phone buzzed. Something in Maria's voice made him cut the lesson short immediately. "James, they're here. The Azteca cartel. They're circling Sarah like vultures." James's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "I'll be there in 3 hours. Call our contact at the embassy, then get everyone inside." El Coyote's smile never reached his eyes as he addressed Sarah through the gate. "Señorita Mitchell, we've come about a business opportunity. Your skills could be very valuable to our organization." The threat beneath the polite words was clear as crystal. Sarah stood her ground, channeling the strength she'd learned from her father. "This is a school. Unless you have children to enroll, I'll have to ask you to leave." The cartel members laughed, the sound echoing off the colonial architecture like breaking glass. "Such spirit," El Coyote mocked, "such conviction. You know, we've been watching you, Miss Mitchell, an American teacher, all alone in our territory. So brave, or perhaps foolish." Sarah's mind raced. Her father had prepared her for situations like this, taught her to stay calm, to think strategically. The students were safely inside now, Maria having quietly orchestrated their evacuation from the courtyard. But Sarah knew the real danger was just beginning. "I'm not alone," Sarah replied firmly, "and this isn't your territory. This is a school, protected by international law." El Coyote's amusement faded slightly. "Laws? In San Miguel, señorita, we are the law. And we've decided that you're going to help us with some special translations, documents, conversations, these sensitive matters that require a native English speaker's touch." Three more cartel members emerged from the SUVs, spreading out to cover different angles of the courtyard. Sarah recognized the tactics from her father's teachings. They were establishing control of the space, cutting off potential escape routes. "Last chance," Sarah warned, though her heart was racing. "Leave now or—" "Or what?" El Coyote interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Your American embassy will save you? The local police?" He laughed again, but this time there was no pretense of humor. Do you know how many officials in this city are on our payroll? How many would look the other way if you simply disappeared? The tension in the air thickened as El Coyote signaled his men. They moved forward with practiced coordination, their expensive shoes clicking against the cobblestones. What they didn't know, couldn't know, was that every step brought them closer to their own destruction. Because Sarah Mitchell wasn't just any American teacher. She was the daughter of Commander James Mitchell, former leader of SEAL Team 6, a man who had spent 20 years conducting the kind of operations that never made the headlines but changed the course of conflicts. A man who had trained his daughter not just to survive, but to think like a warrior. And at that very moment, James Mitchell was already in motion. His weekend boating class had been a cover. He maintained a private aircraft at a nearby airstrip, precisely for situations like this. Within minutes of Maria's call, he was airborne, his mind already formulating the response to the cartel's fatal mistake. El Coyote reached through the gate, his manicured fingers wrapping around the iron bars. You see, Miss Mitchell, we're not really asking. We've invested too much time observing you, learning your routines, your skills in both languages, your access to the diplomatic community through this school. You're exactly what we need. Sarah's response was cut short by the sound of the school's heavy wooden doors opening. Maria emerged, her face set with determination. The embassy has been notified, she announced clearly, and Senor Mitchell is on his way. El Coyote's eyebrows rose slightly. Senor Mitchell, ah yes, the father in Texas, the, fishing instructor? His smile widened. Let him come. By then you'll have already agreed to help us. It's amazing how cooperative people become when they understand their situation. One of the cartel members stepped forward, pulling out a set of heavy bolt cutters. The metal of the gate's lock proved no match for the industrial tool, and the iron barrier swung open with an ominous creak. What happened next would become legend in San Miguel, a story of how the most feared cartel in northern Mexico learned that some predators don't advertise their deadly nature. Some, like Commander James Mitchell, had spent decades perfecting the art of striking from the shadows. Before we continue with this story, tell us where you're watching from. If you like this kind of content, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we have another incredible story for you. Sarah stood her ground as El Coyote stepped through the gate, flanked by his men. The morning sun had risen higher now, burning away the last traces of dawn and illuminating the courtyard in harsh detail. El Coyote's expensive suit gleamed, his gold watch catching the light as he gestured to his men. "Bring her," he commanded. "Carefully. We wouldn't want to damage such a valuable asset." But as the cartel members moved forward, something in Sarah's stance made them hesitate. She wasn't showing the fear they were accustomed to seeing in their victims. Instead, she maintained the same calm focus her father had taught her during countless hours of training. "You still have a choice," Sarah told them quietly. "Walk away now. Pretend you never came here." El Coyote laughed, but one of his men, a veteran enforcer named Ramirez, felt a chill run down his spine. Something about the girl's confidence wasn't right. In his years with the cartel, he'd seen all kinds of reactions to their intimidation. But this was different. Choices. El Coyote stepped closer, his presence designed to overwhelm. "Let me explain your choices, señorita. You come with us now, quietly, and help us with our business. In return, this school, these children, they remain safe, or..." The threat hung in the air, But Sarah's expression didn't change. Years of her father's lessons echoed in her mind. The most dangerous moment is when they think they've won. That's when they make mistakes. Maria watched from the doorway, her phone clutched in her hand. On the other end of the line, James. Mitchell's voice was cold and precise. 20 minutes out. Keep them talking. Help is already in motion. What the Azteca cartel didn't know was that Commander Mitchell had maintained a network of contacts throughout Mexico, former operators, intelligence assets, and trusted allies, who owed him favors from missions that would never appear in any official record. With one call, that network had sprung into action. As El Coyote reached for Sarah's arm, the first pieces of that response were already falling into place. The cartel's communications were being jammed, their escape routes quietly blocked, and their worst nightmare was approaching at 300 knots, carrying the kind of justice that wouldn't be found in any courthouse. El Coyote's hand never reached Sarah. In one fluid motion, she stepped back, maintaining the precise distance her father had drilled into her through countless training sessions. "Control the space," his voice echoed in her memory. "Distance is your first line of defense." The cartel leader's eyes narrowed, recognizing the deliberate nature of her movement. This wasn't the instinctive flinch of a frightened teacher. This was something else entirely. High above San Miguel, James Mitchell's private aircraft cut through the morning sky. The cabin looked like any other small charter plane, but hidden compartments contained equipment that would make Special Forces units envious. As he flew, James activated a secure satellite phone. "Ghost Protocol Alpha," he spoke quietly. "Authorization Mitchell 7 Delta 0. Across San Miguel, seemingly ordinary citizens received encrypted messages. A street vendor outside the school quietly photographed the cartel vehicle's plates. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. A maintenance worker on a nearby roof documented faces. A local shop owner began clearing his establishment, recognizing the signal for what was about to unfold. These were members of the Guardian Network, former operators, intelligence assets, and trusted allies who had chosen to protect their communities from the shadows. James had spent years building this network, knowing that someday the evil men would threaten those he loved. In the school courtyard, El Coyote's frustration mounted. Something about this situation felt wrong, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. "Perhaps we need to demonstrate our seriousness," he growled, signaling one of his men. The enforcer reached into his jacket, but before he could withdraw his weapon, Maria's voice rang out from the doorway. "The children are watching," she announced clearly, drawing attention to the young faces pressed against the classroom windows above. It was a tactical move Sarah recognized from her father's teachings. Sometimes the best defense is reminding evil men of their humanity, he had told her. Even the worst criminals often hesitate before violence in front of children. The strategy worked. El Coyote's hand dropped, his expression darkening. "Clear the building," he ordered his men. "Get those brats away from the windows." But as two cartel members moved toward the school entrance, Maria smiled slightly. The heavy wooden doors had already been barred from the inside, another security protocol James had insisted upon when Sarah took the teaching position. "The doors are reinforced steel core," Sarah informed them calmly. "The windows are bulletproof. This isn't just a school, it's a fortress designed to protect these children." El Coyote's composure cracked slightly. "You think some fancy doors will stop us? We'll bring this whole place down if we have to." "Will you?" Sarah's voice carried. Genuine curiosity. In broad daylight, with diplomatic children inside, how many governments are you prepared to anger? Ramirez, the veteran enforcer, felt his unease growing. The girl knew too much, was too prepared. This wasn't random, they'd walked into something, but he couldn't piece it together yet. In the distance, police sirens began to wail. El Coyote smiled coldly. Ah, the local authorities, our friends. Are they? Sarah asked quietly. Are you sure they're responding to this situation, or is something else happening in San Miguel right now? The cartel leader's phone buzzed. The message he read made his face pale slightly. Simultaneous raids were hitting cartel properties across the city, warehouses, safe houses, front businesses. But these weren't local police. These were federal units, operating with precision intelligence they shouldn't have had. High above, James Mitchell smiled grimly as he monitored encrypted communications. The Guardian network had been feeding information to trusted federal units for months, building a comprehensive picture of the Azteca cartel's operations. All they had needed was the right moment to strike, a moment when the cartel's leadership would be distracted, focused on a single location. El Coyote's phone buzzed again, and again, more reports of raids, more assets being seized. The cartel leader's hand shook slightly as he realized the magnitude of what was happening. "What have you done?" he demanded. "Me?" Sarah's innocent tone carried just a hint of steel. "I'm just a teacher, but you should ask yourself, why this school? Why me? Did you really think an American citizen working at an international school with diplomatic students wouldn't have protection?" In the school's security office, Maria watched multiple screens showing thermal imaging of the surrounding buildings. Red dots indicated the positions of Guardian Network snipers who had quietly taken up positions. James had installed the security system personally, ensuring his daughter would never truly be alone. El Coyote grabbed Sarah's arm roughly. "You're coming with us now. We'll sort this out from a more secure location." "I wouldn't," Sarah said softly. "Look at your men." The cartel leader turned. His enforcers had spread out instinctively, but now they looked uncertain. Professional killers develop a sixth sense for danger, and right now every instinct was screaming that they were being hunted. Ramirez spotted it first, the almost imperceptible red dots appearing on his companions' chests. Not all of them, just enough to send a message. They were in someone's crosshairs being toyed with. "Jefe," Ramirez called out, his voice tight, "we need to go, now." But El Coyote's pride wouldn't let him retreat. "You think some hidden gunmen scare us? We are the Azteca cartel. We own this city." "Do you?" Sarah's question hung in the air. "Look around. Really look. Notice anything strange about the streets?" The cartel members scanned their surroundings, and the truth hit them. The usually busy streets had emptied. Shops were closed. Even the persistent street vendors were gone. It was as if the city itself was holding its breath, waiting. James Mitchell's voice crackled through Sarah's hidden earpiece. 5 minutes out, honey. Keep them off balance." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "You know what's interesting about predators?" she asked conversationally. "The most dangerous ones don't advertise. They don't strut or threaten. They wait. They plan. And when they strike, a massive explosion rocked the city. From their position, they could see smoke rising from what used to be one of the cartel's main compounds. Another explosion followed, then another. Key cartel infrastructure, destroyed with surgical precision. El Coyote's phone was buzzing constantly now. His empire was being systematically dismantled, and he still couldn't understand how. "Who are you?" he demanded. CIA? DEA? Sarah shook her head slightly. You still don't get it. I'm not anyone special. I'm just a daughter who was taught by her father to be prepared, to understand that evil exists in the world, but so does justice. Sometimes justice wears a uniform, carries a badge, and sometimes the sound of rotors cut through the air as a sleek helicopter appeared over the school, running dark and silent. Military-grade stealth technology that shouldn't have been in civilian hands. El Coyote stared at it, finally beginning to understand the magnitude of his mistake. Sometimes, Sarah continued, justice is a father who spent 20 years in the darkness, learning how to fight monsters so his daughter would never have to be afraid. The helicopter touched down in the courtyard, its rotors kicking up dust and debris. The side door slid open, revealing James Mitchell. He wasn't wearing tactical gear or carrying visible weapons. He was dressed simply in civilian clothes, moving with the quiet confidence of a man who had nothing to prove. "Good morning, gentlemen," James called out pleasantly. "I believe you've met my daughter. Shall we discuss your business proposition?" El Coyote's men began backing away, but found their retreat cut off. Members of the Guardian network had emerged from their hidden positions, former operators moving with the same deadly grace as their leader. "You see," James continued, approaching slowly, "when Sarah decided to teach here, I made some calls, found others like me, warriors who'd seen enough darkness, who wanted to protect instead of destroy. Men and women who understood that sometimes the best way to fight evil is to be prepared for it." The cartel leader's arrogance crumbled as he finally recognized the man approaching him. Stories about Commander Mitchell were whispered in certain circles. Operations that officially never happened, victories that could never be acknowledged. "The mistake you made," James said softly, now standing beside his daughter, "wasn't threatening. My daughter, your mistake was thinking that peace means weakness, that those who choose to teach, to build, to protect, are somehow less dangerous than those who destroy." In the distance, more explosions illuminated the morning sky. The cartels. Infrastructure was being systematically dismantled, its operations exposed, its power broken. Not by armies or police forces, but by shadows. Warriors who had chosen to protect the light while dwelling in darkness. "So now," James concluded, "you have a choice. The same choice Sarah offered you earlier. Walk away. Leave this place. Never return. Or..." His voice hardened slightly. "Find out why some of us are feared even by those who claim to fear nothing." El Coyote looked around wildly, seeing his empire crumbling, his men surrounded, his power evaporating like morning mist. And in that moment, facing the quiet strength of a father and daughter who had prepared for this day, he learned what true fear felt like. El Coyote's hand moved lightning fast toward his concealed weapon, but James Mitchell was already in motion. The retired SEAL's response wasn't the dramatic display of violence the cartel members expected. Instead, his movement was subtle, efficient, almost gentle as he redirected El Coyote's momentum, sending the cartel leader stumbling off balance. "Interesting choice," James commented mildly, "but predictable. Men like you always reach for a weapon when their world starts crumbling." Around the courtyard, the Guardian network operators maintained their positions, their presence more felt than seen. These weren't just former soldiers. They were teachers, shopkeepers, ordinary citizens who had chosen to stand against the darkness while maintaining their place in the light. "You think this ends here?" El Coyote snarled, regaining his footing. The cartel is bigger than me, bigger than any of us. Cut off one head. Two more shall take its place, James interrupted. That's not how this works. You see, while you were focused on my daughter, your entire operation was being dismantled. Not just the obvious targets, the warehouses, the safe houses, the front businesses. We went deeper. Sarah watched her. Father work, recognizing the strategy he'd taught her years ago. Sometimes, he had said, the strongest weapon isn't the gun in your hand, but the truth in your words. James continued, his voice carrying across the courtyard. Your offshore accounts? Frozen. Your digital infrastructure? Compromised. Your political protection? He smiled slightly. Let's just say a lot of officials are suddenly very eager to prove their loyalty to law enforcement. Ramirez, the veteran enforcer, felt the ground shifting beneath his feet. He'd survived 3 cartel wars, countless street battles, but this was different. This wasn't about territory or profit. This was systematic destruction. Your men are loyal, James acknowledged, gesturing to the surrounding cartel members. But loyalty built on fear shatters when a stronger force appears. Look at them, really look. They're already calculating their odds, weighing their options. El Coyote spun around, seeing the truth in his men's faces. The unshakable confidence that had defined his organization was cracking, revealing the uncertainty beneath. But I'm not here to destroy, James continued, his voice softening slightly. Destruction is easy, building something better, that takes real strength. From inside the school, children's voices carried on the morning air. A reminder of why this place mattered, why it needed protection. Sarah moved to stand beside her father, their unified presence a testament to a different kind of power. You have skills, Sarah addressed the cartel members directly. Training, experience, capabilities, but you're using them to tear down, to terrorize. Imagine using those same skills to protect, to build. One of the younger cartel members shifted uncomfortably. Before joining the Azteca, he dreamed of being a soldier, of serving with honor. Somewhere along the way, that dream had twisted, corrupted by the allure of easy money and false power. James noticed the shift. There's a choice here, he said, quietly. Not just for your leader, but for all of you. The same choice I made years ago when I left active duty, to either become part of the darkness I'd fought against, or to find a new way to serve. Maria emerged from the school carrying a thick folder. Your complete operation, she announced, handing it to James. Financial records, shipping routes, political connections, everything the authorities need to dismantle the entire cartel structure. El Coyote lunged for the folder, but found himself smoothly intercepted by one of the Guardian network operators, a former Force Recon Marine who now taught mathematics at the local university. You see, James explained, casually flipping through, the documents. Real power isn't in causing fear, it's in creating something worth protecting. When Sarah decided to teach here, we didn't just install security systems and gather intelligence. We built a community. Around the courtyard, more members of the Guardian network emerged from their positions. A local doctor who had patched up gunshot wounds in combat zones. A former intelligence analyst who now ran a coffee shop. A retired bomb disposal expert who coached youth soccer. Every one of these people, James gestured to his allies, could have chosen an easier path, could have looked the other way, accepted the cartel's presence as inevitable. Instead, they chose to stand, not with violence, not with grand gestures, but with quiet determination. Sarah addressed the younger cartel members directly. My father taught me that strength isn't in the power to take life, but in the courage to protect it. Look at these children. She gestured to the school windows. They deserve a future not defined by fear. One of the cartel members, barely more than a boy himself, suddenly threw down his weapon. "I'm done," he announced, his voice shaking. "My mother wanted me to be a doctor. Before all this." James smiled gently. "It's not too late. The Guardian Network doesn't just fight darkness. We help people find their way back to the light." El Coyote watched in mounting fury as more of his men began to waver. "Traitors!" he spat. "You think you can just walk away?" "They can," James corrected him, "because right now, across the city, similar scenes are playing out. Your entire power structure is being given the same choice, and you'd be surprised how many are choosing a different path." Sarah's phone buzzed with updates from other Guardian Network cells. Cartel members across San Miguel were surrendering, many offering information in exchange for a chance at redemption. The carefully maintained facade of invincibility was crumbling. "Your empire wasn't built on loyalty," James told El Coyote. "It was built on fear, and fear only works until something stronger appears. Not stronger in violence," he clarified, "but stronger in purpose." A series of police sirens approached the school, but these weren't the corrupted local officers the cartel usually dealt with. These were federal agents working with detailed intelligence provided by the Guardian Network. "This is the moment," James announced to the assembled cartel members, "where you decide who you really are, not who circumstances made you, not who fear shaped you into, but who you choose to be." The young man who had dreamed of being a doctor stepped forward. "How?" he asked simply. "How do we come back?" Sarah reached into her bag and produced a set of documents. Witness protection programs, rehabilitation services, medical training programs. We don't just destroy, we rebuild. More cartel. Members began lowering their weapons, years of accumulated guilt and fear giving way to the possibility of redemption. Even Ramirez, the hardened enforcer, felt something stir in his heart. A memory of who he had been before the violence had consumed him. "This is impossible," El Coyote muttered, watching his men choose a different path. "You can't just change everything." "We already have," James replied calmly, "because that's what fathers do. We don't just protect our own children, we try to build a world worthy of all children." The federal agents entered the courtyard, led by a commander who had worked with James in another life. The arrests would be by the book, the evidence ironclad, but more importantly, the cycle of violence had been broken. "You know what the real difference is between us?" James asked El Coyote as the agents approached. "You built your power on making people fear death. I built mine on teaching people to love life." Sarah watched as the cartel members were processed, some arrested, others entering protective custody, each choosing their own path toward redemption. The morning sun had risen fully now, burning away the shadows that had haunted San Miguel, if for so long. "Love is stronger than fear," she heard her father say to the young man who wanted to be a doctor. "Remember that, and remember that it's never too late to become who you were meant to be." The Guardian Network operators began to fade back into their daily lives, returning to classrooms, clinics, and shops. Their strength wasn't in standing apart from the community, but in being its hidden guardians, always ready to protect what mattered most. Maria approached with a new group of students, eager to begin their English lessons despite the morning's excitement, because that was the real victory. Not just stopping evil, but ensuring that life, learning, and hope continue to thrive. Ready for class? Sarah asked her students, receiving enthusiastic nods in response, because this was why they had fought, not just to defeat darkness, but to protect the light that made life worth living. As the federal agents led El Coyote away, James Mitchell noticed something in the cartel leader's eyes, not defeat or anger, but confusion. The kind of confusion that comes when someone's entire worldview shatters. "I don't understand," El Coyote said quietly, almost to himself. "We had everything. Money, power, fear. How did one man destroy it all?" James fell into step beside him, his voice pitched for the cartel leader's ears alone. "That's your first mistake. Thinking I destroyed anything. What happened here today wasn't destruction, it was transformation." Inside the school, Sarah began organizing the students into their regular classes, maintaining normalcy despite the extraordinary events unfolding outside. She had learned from her father that sometimes the greatest victory is in showing evil, that it cannot disrupt the rhythms of daily life. "You see those children?" James gestured toward the classrooms. "Every one of them will remember this day, not as a day of violence or fear, but as the day they learned that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the quiet choice to stand firm, to protect what matters." The young cartel member who wanted to be a doctor approached James hesitantly. "Senor Mitchell, my name is Miguel. Before I joined the cartel, I was in medical school. First year, I thought I had lost that dream forever." James smiled warmly. "Nothing is ever truly lost, Miguel. The Guardian Network has connections with medical programs across the Americas. People who understand that redemption isn't just about paying for past sins, it's about building a better future." Ramirez, the veteran enforcer, watched this exchange with growing interest. In 20 years of cartel work, he had never seen anything like this. Violence he understood, revenge he expected, but this was something entirely new. "Your men," Ramirez addressed James. "The Guardian Network. They're not just fighters, are they?" "No," James confirmed. "They're builders. Each one chose to use their skills not just to combat evil, but to nurture good. The former medic who now runs a free clinic in the barrio, the intelligence analyst, teaching computer skills to underprivileged youth, the combat engineer helping rebuild schools." Sarah emerged from the school carrying a stack of documents. "The transformation programs are ready," she announced. "We've got immediate placements for anyone willing to make the change." The federal commander, Colonel Torres, reviewed the papers with raised eyebrows. "This is comprehensive. Medical training, education programs, job placement, psychological support. You've thought of everything. Because violence isn't ended by more violence," James explained. "It's ended by showing people a better path, by helping them become who they were meant to be before fear and desperation led them astray." Around the courtyard, more cartel members began stepping forward, drawn by the possibility of redemption. Each had a story, dreams abandoned, choices made in moments of weakness, paths taken that seemed to have no return. "But why?" El Coyote demanded, still struggling to comprehend. "Why offer us a way back after everything we've done?" "Because 20 years ago," James replied, "I stood where you stand now. After my last mission, I had a choice: to let the darkness I'd fought consume me, or to find a way to create light. I chose light. Now I'm offering you the same choice." Maria emerged from the school office with another update. The Guardian Network's actions had triggered a cascade effect across the region. Other cartel operations were falling apart as members seized the opportunity for change. "It's like a dam breaking," Colonel Torres observed. "Once you show people there's another way, they remember who they were meant to be," Sarah finished. She turned to address the gathered cartel members. "Each of you had dreams once, aspirations beyond violence and fear. Those dreams didn't die, they were just buried." Miguel, the former medical student, spoke up. "In the cartel, they told us power comes from making people fear you. But today I saw real power, the power to change lives, to offer hope." James placed a hand on the young man's shoulder. "That's the secret they never teach you in combat. The strongest weapon isn't the one that destroys, it's the one that transforms." The morning had progressed, and from the school windows came the sound of children singing, a scheduled music class continuing despite the drama outside. The normalcy of it struck the cartel members deeply, a reminder of the world they had cut themselves off from. "Listen," James urged them. "That's not just music. That's the sound of life continuing, of hope persisting. Every time you chose violence, you were trying to silence that sound. But it never worked, did it? Because deep down, you remembered being those children." Ramirez removed his expensive cartel ring, letting it fall to the courtyard stones. "I was a soldier once," he said, quietly. Before I lost my way. I told myself I was still fighting, still serving a cause, but the only cause was greed." "The uniform changes," James acknowledged, "but the warrior's heart remains. The question is, what will you fight for now? What will you protect?" Sarah began distributing the transformation program documents, each packet tailored to individual skills and backgrounds. "We've been preparing these for months," she explained, "learning your stories, understanding your potential." "You knew?" El Coyote asked, genuine surprise in his voice. "You knew we would come for you?" "We knew someone would," James corrected, "because evil always overreaches, always mistakes peace for weakness, and in doing so gives good men and women the chance to prove that the strongest force isn't fear, it's hope." Colonel Torres received word that similar transformations were occurring across San Miguel. Cartel members were surrendering, offering information, seeking the same opportunity for redemption they had witnessed in the school courtyard. "It's not just about stopping the cartel," Sarah explained to a group of younger members. "It's about healing the community. Every person who chooses a better path becomes a beacon for others." The Guardian Network operators began sharing their own stories of transformation. The former Marine sniper, who now taught physics, using his precision and patience to guide young minds. The intelligence officer who founded a youth mentorship program, channeling her strategic thinking into creating opportunities. "Your skills aren't evil," James told them. "Your training isn't wasted. Everything you learned, discipline, coordination, loyalty, can be turned toward building rather than destroying." Miguel looked at his hands, surgeon's hands that had been turned to violence. "Can we really go back? After everything?" "Not back," Sarah corrected gently. "Forward, toward who you were always meant to be." The federal agents continued their work, processing those who would face justice while identifying candidates for the transformation programs. But even those headed for prosecution were changed, the defiance replaced by contemplation. "You want to know the real reason your empire fell so easily?" James asked El Coyote as the authorities prepared to transport him. It's because deep down, your men were waiting for permission to be better than what you made them. The cartel leader had no response, finally beginning to understand the true nature of his defeat. He hadn't just lost his power, he had lost the very foundation of fear it was built upon. As the morning turned to afternoon, the school began to pulse with new energy. Former cartel members who had chosen transformation were already being integrated into community service programs, their first steps toward redemption guided by Guardian Network mentors. Remember, James addressed them all, true strength isn't in having power over others. It's in having the courage to lift them up, to help them find their way when they're lost. Sarah watched as Miguel was introduced to a Guardian network doctor who would help him resume his medical studies. Ramirez met with the Veterans Support Coordinator to explore ways of using his leadership skills positively. Each person who had entered the courtyard as a threat was leaving as a possibility. "This is what victory really looks like," James told his daughter quietly. "Not in defeating enemies, but in transforming them into allies. Because the only way to truly defeat darkness is to create more light." 6 hours after the confrontation at San Miguel International School, James Mitchell stood in the makeshift command center they'd established in the school's library. Screens displayed real-time updates from across the region as the ripple effects of the morning's events continued to spread. "We've got another group requesting extraction," Colonel Torres announced, reviewing fresh intelligence. "Former cartel enforcers in Guadalajara. They say they want what you offered here." James studied the tactical map, noting the patterns emerging. "They're not just running from something," he observed. "They're running toward something. Hope is contagious." In the school's medical station, Miguel had already begun putting his medical training to use, working alongside Guardian Network doctors to treat minor injuries from the day's operations. His hands, which hours ago had served violence, now moved with gentle precision as he bandaged a young agent's arm. "You know," Miguel said to Sarah as she brought fresh supplies, "in the cartel, they taught us that weakness must be eliminated. But watching your father today, I learned that true strength lies in healing weakness, not destroying it." The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the courtyard, where Ramirez, the former enforcer, was meeting with a group of younger cartel members who had chosen transformation. His tactical experience, once used to coordinate acts of violence, now helped organize protection details for rehabilitation centers. "Look at this," Ramirez called James over, showing him a map marked with cartel safe houses. "These locations, they're not just storage or operations. They're where they keep the ones who want out, the ones too afraid to run." James's expression hardened slightly. "How many?" "Hundreds," Ramirez replied. "Young men and women recruited. Through fear or desperation. They maintain them through addiction, threats to family, psychological manipulation." Sarah joined them, her teacher's heart aching at the revelation. "Then those are our next targets, not with violence, but with hope." In the command center, Colonel Torres received word that several high-ranking cartel lieutenants had made contact through secure channels. They weren't seeking deals or immunity. They wanted to know if the transformation program was real, if there was truly a path back from darkness. "It's starting," James told his gathered allies. "The cartels have always maintained power through isolation, making their members believe they have no choice, no way out. Today we shattered that illusion. Maria arrived with news from her contacts in other schools across Mexico. "The story is spreading," she reported, "not just about the cartel's defeat, but about the choice you offered. Teachers are reporting students coming forward, revealing pressures to join gangs, asking for help." "Because children recognize truth," Sarah observed. "They see that strength doesn't have to mean cruelty." The Guardian Network's medical teams had begun coordinating with local clinics, preparing for an influx of cartel members seeking addiction treatment and psychological support. James watched as former enemies worked alongside each other, their shared commitment to healing bridging old divides. "You've started something remarkable," Colonel Torres told James. "This goes beyond law enforcement or military strategy. You're changing the narrative about what's possible." But the day's work was far from over. Reports came in about cartel leadership in other regions mobilizing, trying to contain the spread of hope that threatened their power. They couldn't understand that they were fighting something stronger than weapons or fear. "Let them come," James said calmly. "Every attempt to stop this will only prove why it's necessary." In the school's computer lab, Guardian Network cyber specialists worked alongside reformed cartel hackers. Their combined skills now focused on identifying and protecting other potential defectors. The very digital infrastructure once used to maintain control was being turned into a lifeline for escape. Miguel approached James with an unexpected request. "There's a medical school in my hometown," he said. "The cartel uses it to launder money, but it's still a real school, with real students. If we could secure it, turn it legitimate." James smiled, recognizing the spark of positive transformation spreading. "Make a plan," he encouraged. "The Guardian Network isn't just about fighting darkness, it's about creating sustainable light." As evening approached, Sarah gathered her students for a special assembly. The children, who had shown remarkable resilience throughout the day's events, sat attentively as she explained the importance of what they had witnessed. "Today, you saw something rare and precious," she told them. "You saw that people can change, that it's never too late to choose a better path. Remember this, because someday you might be the one helping someone find their way back to the light." In the command center, Ramirez worked with federal agents to identify cartel members most likely to accept transformation. His intimate knowledge of the organization's psychology proved invaluable in crafting approaches that would resonate with those seeking change. "The key," he explained, "is showing them they're not alone. The cartel maintains control by convincing members they're irredeemable, that society will never accept them back. We have to break that lie." James received word that several cartel-controlled neighborhoods had spontaneously organized community meetings, residents finding courage in the day's events to stand against the fear that had dominated their lives. "This is how real change happens," he told Sarah. "Not through grand gestures or dramatic battles, but through countless small acts of courage, spreading from person to person, heart to heart." The Guardian Network's communication channels were flooded with messages from across Latin America. Former soldiers, law enforcement officers, and security specialists offering to establish new cells to help spread the transformation program to their communities. "We're going to need a bigger network," Colonel Torres observed. "We already have it," James replied. "Every person who chooses transformation becomes a guardian in their own right. The power of positive change is that it multiplies naturally." Now, as night fell over San Miguel, the school's lights burned bright, a beacon of hope in a city learning to dream again. In classrooms converted to planning centers, former cartel members worked alongside their previous adversaries, their combined knowledge creating new strategies for community protection. Miguel, taking a break from his medical duties, shared his story with a group of young federal agents. "I thought joining the cartel made me powerful," he admitted. "But today I learned that real power lies in the ability to heal, to protect, to build." Sarah found her father on the school roof, surveying the city lights. "You knew, didn't you?" she asked. "When you started the Guardian Network, you knew it would become this." James shook his head slightly. "I knew it was possible," he corrected, "but possibility only becomes reality when people choose it. What happened today? That was everyone's choice, everyone's courage." Below them, the school courtyard had been transformed into a coordination center for humanitarian aid. Former cartel members worked alongside community volunteers, organizing resources for families affected by years of violence. "Look at that," James said softly. "The same hands that once brought fear, now bringing hope. That's the real victory, not just stopping evil, but transforming it into good." The night deepened, but the work continued. Plans were made, strategies developed, and most importantly, hope continued to spread. Because in San Miguel, a fundamental truth had been revealed, that the strongest force for change isn't violence or fear, but the courageous choice to become something better than what you were. As midnight approached in San Miguel, James Mitchell received an urgent message that would test everything the Guardian Network had built. A rival cartel, seeing the Azteca's transformation as an opportunity, was mobilizing to claim their territory. But this time, they faced something unprecedented. A community united in purpose, former enemies working together to protect their newfound peace. "They're expecting to find chaos," James told his gathered allies in the command center. "Instead, they'll find strength they never anticipated." Colonel Torres spread out fresh intelligence across the tactical table. "They're moving forces from 3 directions, trying to overwhelm us before the transformation can take root. But they don't understand what they're really fighting." Ramirez, studying the tactical displays, noticed something that made him smile. "Look at these patterns," he pointed out. "They're using old intelligence, expecting the usual cartel response teams. They don't know that those same teams are now working with us." In the school's medical wing, Miguel was training other former cartel members in emergency medical response. "In the cartel," he explained while demonstrating proper bandaging technique, "we learned to cause trauma. Now we learn to heal it. This is real power." Sarah organized the school's parents and teachers into support teams, creating a network of safe houses and evacuation routes. "The strength of a community," she told them, "isn't in its walls or weapons, but in its people's commitment to each other." A message arrived from an unexpected source. Cartel families, the wives and children of members who had chosen transformation. They wanted to help, to be part of building something better than the life of fear they'd known. "Bring them in," James decided immediately. True transformation isn't just about the warriors. It's about healing entire families, entire communities. Maria coordinated with other schools across the region, establishing a network of safe zones. "The children are our strongest allies," she observed. "They see the change in their parents, their siblings. They become ambassadors of hope." The rival cartel's first probe came just before dawn, surveillance teams testing the community's defenses. What they found stunned them. Instead of chaos or weakness, they encountered organized resistance unlike anything they'd seen before. "Notice how they're pulling back," James pointed out to Colonel Torres. "They expected to find victims. Instead, they found guardians." In the command center, Ramirez worked with former cartel members to anticipate and counter the rivals' tactics. Their intimate knowledge of cartel psychology proved invaluable in predicting and preventing violence before it could erupt. "They think in terms of territory and fear," Ramirez explained. "We need to show them something different, a community that refuses to be divided." Sarah's students, despite the late hour, had insisted on helping. They created artwork and messages of hope, transforming the school's walls into a testament to the power of unity and transformation. "Look at this." Sarah showed her father a drawing made by one of her youngest students. It showed former cartel members and community members working together with the words "Heroes can change" written in careful Spanish. The Guardian network's influence continued to spread. Other communities, inspired by San Miguel's transformation, began establishing their own programs. Former enemies became mentors, showing others the path from darkness to light. "It's like watching a flower bloom in the desert," Miguel observed, taking a brief break from his medical duties. "Everyone said it was impossible, that violence was just the way things were, but now..." James received word that several high-ranking members of the rival cartel had made secret contact, asking about the transformation program. The ripple effect was becoming a wave, challenging long-held beliefs about power and redemption. "You know what they're really afraid of?" James asked his gathered allies. "Not our strength or our numbers. They're afraid of the truth we've revealed, that their power was always an illusion." In the school courtyard, former cartel members trained alongside community volunteers, learning new ways to use their skills for protection rather than intimidation. The discipline and precision they'd learned in violence was being redirected toward defense and community service. Colonel Torres watched the training with growing appreciation. "This is more than just rehabilitation," he observed. "You're creating a new kind of warrior, one who fights for hope instead of fear." As dawn approached, the rival cartel launched what they intended to be a show of force. Multiple vehicles approached the school, expecting to find a weakened target. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by a community united in purpose. "Hold your positions," James instructed calmly over the radio. "Let them see what they're really facing." The cartel vehicles stopped, their occupants witnessing something unprecedented. Former enemies standing together, protected not by violence, but by unshakable unity. Children's artwork declaring hope visible on the school walls. Medical teams ready not just to fight, but to heal. "This is your moment," James broadcast on an open channel. "Look around you, really look. See what's possible when we choose to be better than our fears." The tension held for several long moments. Then, slowly, the cartel vehicles began to withdraw, not in defeat, but in confusion, faced with a force they didn't understand and couldn't combat. "They'll be back," Colonel Torres warned. "Yes," James agreed, "but next time they'll come seeking understanding rather than conquest. Because what we've built here isn't just a defense, it's a testament to the human capacity for change." In the medical wing, Miguel treated a young cartel member who had been wounded trying to escape his former life. As he worked, he shared his own story of transformation, showing that change was possible, that redemption was real. Sarah gathered her students as the sun rose, using the night's events as a teaching moment. "Remember," she told them, "the greatest victory isn't in defeating enemies, but in turning them into friends. The Guardian Network's communication channels were alive with reports of similar transformations beginning in other communities. The model they'd created in San Miguel was becoming a blueprint for change across the region. "This is how we really win," James told his daughter as they watched the sunrise together. "Not by fighting darkness, but by creating so much light that darkness has nowhere to take root." Ramirez, who had once been one of the cartel's most feared enforcers, now stood as a symbol of transformation. His tactical knowledge, once used to spread fear, now protected hope. "We were wrong," he told a group of former colleagues. "Power isn't in making people fear you. It's in helping them become stronger than their fears." The school began its regular day as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Children attended classes, teachers taught lessons, and former cartel members worked alongside community volunteers to maintain security. This normalcy, this refusal to let violence disrupt life, was perhaps the greatest victory of all. "You know what the real miracle is?" James asked Colonel Torres as they reviewed the night's events. "It's not that we stopped an attack. It's that we showed a better way exists. Every person who chooses transformation becomes a light for others to follow." As the morning progressed, news arrived of more cartel members seeking change, more communities finding courage to stand against fear. The transformation that had begun in one school courtyard was becoming a movement, powered not by violence or intimidation, but by the simple, profound truth that it's never too late to choose a better path. "This is just the beginning," Sarah told her father as they watched Miguel teaching basic first aid to a group of former cartel members. "Every person who changes becomes proof that change is possible." James nodded, understanding that they had created something more powerful than any weapon. They had created hope. And hope, once ignited, spreads like wildfire through hearts long frozen by fear. 1 week after the confrontation that changed San Miguel, the transformation had taken root in ways no one could have predicted. The school courtyard, once the site of a standoff, had become a symbol of rebirth. James Mitchell stood watching as former cartel members, now wearing the distinctive blue vests of the Guardian Network's Community Service Division, helped local children plant a garden. "From bullets to blooms," Sarah remarked, joining her father. "Did you ever imagine this?" Miguel, now running the school's newly established medical training program, approached with remarkable news. 3 more cartel doctors made contact. Overnight, they're tired of patching up violence. They want to heal. The garden project had been Miguel's idea, a way to show that hands once stained with violence could create life instead of taking it. Each plant represented a former cartel member who had chosen transformation, their names written on small plaques beside the growing flowers. "But it's more than just symbolism," Miguel explained to a group of visiting federal officials. "Working with the earth, nurturing life, it helps heal trauma. These men are learning patience, gentleness, skills the cartels tried to destroy in them." Inside the school, Ramirez had transformed the Security Operations Center into something unprecedented. A rehabilitation command center that combined tactical expertise with psychological support. Former cartel members used their intelligence-gathering skills to identify and reach out to others, seeking escape from the life. "The cartels taught us to see weakness as something to exploit," Ramirez told his team during their morning briefing. "Now we understand that helping others overcome weakness is the greatest strength. Colonel Torres arrived with satellite imagery showing something remarkable. Cartel safe houses across the region were being abandoned, not through violence or law enforcement action, but through choice. The transformation virus, as some had begun calling it, was spreading faster than anyone had anticipated. "Look at this," Torres pointed to specific locations. "These aren't just foot soldiers leaving. These are entire operations shutting down because the people running them are choosing something better." In the school's computer lab, former cartel hackers worked alongside Guardian Network cyber specialists, creating secure communication channels for others seeking escape. They called it the Digital Underground Railroad, a network of hope in the digital darkness. "Remember when we used these skills to spread fear?" one former hacker told James. "Now we're spreading something stronger, the truth that change is possible." Sarah's English classes had become something more than language lessons. Her students, many of them children of former cartel members, were learning to express their experiences of transformation through writing and art. "My papa doesn't have scary eyes anymore," one young girl read from her essay. "He smiles now, real smiles that make his eyes shine. He says he's learning to be the hero he always wanted to be when he was my age." The Guardian Network's influence had begun attracting unexpected allies. Local business owners, once forced to pay protection money, now volunteered resources for rehabilitation programs. Religious leaders of various faiths offered counseling and support. Former victims stepped forward to help their one-time tormentors find redemption. "This is how you truly defeat an enemy," James explained to a gathering of international observers. "Not by destroying them, but by helping them destroy the darkness within themselves." Maria had established a program matching transformed cartel members with community needs. Former enforcers now provided security for women's shelters. Ex-traffickers used their logistics knowledge to distribute food and medical supplies to underserved areas. "The skills aren't evil," Maria explained. "It's how you use them that matters." The school's gymnasium had been converted into a training center where former cartel combat instructors taught self-defense classes with a crucial difference. Every lesson began and ended with discussions about responsibility, protection, and the difference between power and strength. "We used to teach people how to dominate through fear," one instructor reflected. "Now we teach them how to protect through love. The techniques are similar, but the heart behind them makes all the difference." Miguel's medical program had expanded beyond basic first aid. Former cartel members with medical training were now working in community clinics, their knowledge of trauma care proving invaluable in areas where professional medical help was scarce. "You know what the real miracle is?" Miguel asked during a break between training sessions. "It's not just that we're healing bodies, we're healing souls. Every person we help becomes proof that redemption is possible." The transformation had begun affecting the region's economy in unexpected ways. As cartel operations shut down, legitimate businesses began flourishing. Former money launderers used their financial expertise to help small businesses secure legal funding. Ex-smuggling networks were repurposed to distribute agricultural products from isolated communities. "We're not just changing lives," Colonel Torres observed. "We're changing the entire ecosystem that allowed the cartels to thrive." Sarah's students had started a newspaper chronicling the transformation stories. They called it The Phoenix, symbolic of lives rising from the ashes of their past. Each issue featured interviews with former cartel members who had found new purpose. "I used to think strength meant making others fear you," One former enforcer wrote in his column, "Now I understand that real strength is having the courage to face your own fears, to become something better than your past." James received word that other regions were requesting guidance in establishing their own transformation programs. The Guardian Network was evolving from a local initiative into a movement, spreading hope across borders and barriers. But it has to grow naturally, he cautioned during a strategy session. You can't force transformation. You can only create the conditions that make it possible and support those who choose it. Ramirez's team had developed a comprehensive guide for communities wanting to establish their own Guardian networks. It wasn't just about security protocols or rehabilitation programs. It was about creating environments where change could flourish. The key, Ramirez explained to a group of visiting community leaders, is understanding that everyone has light within them. Our job isn't to create that light, it's to help people remember it exists. As evening approached, the school hosted a graduation ceremony, not for students, but for the first class of fully transformed Cartel members who had completed their rehabilitation and training programs. Each graduate received a certificate and a new title, Guardian of Hope. "This isn't the end of your journey," James told the graduates. "It's the beginning of your real mission, helping others find the path you found." Miguel stood among the graduates, his medical credentials reinstated, his future bright with purpose. "A year ago, I thought my dream of being a healer was dead," he addressed the gathering. "Now I understand that sometimes dreams don't die. They just wait for our hearts to be ready for them." The ceremony concluded with an unexpected gesture. The graduates presented James and Sarah with the memorial they had created, a wall of handprints, each one representing a life transformed, a soul reclaimed from darkness. "Look closely," one graduate explained. "Each handprint has 2 dates. The first is when we joined the cartel. The second is when we chose to become something better. Between those dates lies a journey from darkness to light, from fear to hope." As night fell over San Miguel, the school's lights burned bright, a beacon for others seeking transformation. In the garden, the plants continued growing, each one a testament to the truth that had been revealed, that within every heart, no matter how hardened by darkness, a seed of light waits to bloom. "Tomorrow," James told Sarah as they walked through the illuminated courtyard, "more will come seeking change. And we'll be ready, not with weapons or threats, but with something stronger. The proof that transformation is possible, that it's never too late to choose a better path." 1 month after the transformation began in San Miguel, James Mitchell stood in a newly established command center in Mexico City, surrounded by screens showing the unprecedented wave of change sweeping across the region. What had started in a school courtyard had evolved into something that challenged everything people thought they knew about fighting cartels. "We've identified a pattern," Colonel Torres announced, highlighting data points across a digital map. "Every successful transformation creates a ripple effect, reaching approximately 50 kilometers. Within that radius, cartel activity drops by 70%, not through enforcement, but through choice." The command center itself was a testament to the evolution of their mission. Staffed by a mix of federal agents, former cartel members, and Guardian network operators, it represented a new paradigm in community protection. "But here's what's truly remarkable," Sarah added, pulling up her latest research. "The violence isn't just stopping, it's being replaced. Former cartel territories are seeing unprecedented growth in legitimate businesses, community programs, and educational initiatives. Miguel, now running medical training programs across 3 states, arrived with compelling evidence of the transformation's impact on public health. In areas where we've established Guardian network presence, emergency room visits for violence-related injuries have dropped by 80%. But more importantly, we're seeing a surge in people seeking preventive care and addiction treatment. The success had attracted attention from unexpected quarters. International observers, skeptical at first, had come to study what they called the San Miguel model. But James knew the truth. It wasn't a model that could be simply replicated. It was a movement that had to grow organically, powered by individual choices and community commitment. "Tell them what you discovered," James encouraged Miguel, who had been analyzing patterns in the transformations. "It's fascinating," Miguel explained to the gathered officials. "We found that the most effective catalysts for change aren't the big victories or dramatic confrontations. It's the small, daily demonstrations of transformation. A former enforcer helping an elderly woman with her groceries. An ex-trafficker teaching kids to read. These moments create ripples that turn into waves." Ramirez, who had become a key strategist in the expansion effort, highlighted another crucial finding. The cartels always maintained power through isolation, making members believe they were alone, that they had no choice. But now... He gestured to a wall of photographs showing transformed lives. Now every success story becomes a beacon for others. A commotion at the command center's entrance drew attention. A group of women had arrived, wives, mothers, and sisters of cartel members. They called themselves Las Guardianas, the Guardians, and they had become powerful allies in the transformation movement. "We were always told to stay quiet, to accept the violence as the price of survival," their leader, Elena, addressed the gathering. But watching our men transform, seeing them become heroes instead of monsters, it awakened something in us, too. Las Guardianas had established support networks across the region, helping families navigate the challenges of transformation. They provided safe houses, counseling, and perhaps most importantly, proof that change was possible. "The cartels understood something we're only now fully grasping," Sarah observed. "Family bonds can be used to maintain control through fear, or they can become catalysts for healing. We're simply redirecting that power toward light instead of darkness." James received word that another cartel leader had made contact, not to threaten or negotiate, but to ask questions about transformation. This one was different. He had seen his own son graduate from Miguel's medical program, had watched the boy he thought lost to violence become a healer. "That's how it happens," James explained to the observers, "not through force or ultimatums, but through living proof that another path exists." The command center's screens displayed live feeds from transformation centers across Mexico. In Guadalajara, former cartel members trained as emergency responders. In Monterrey, ex-traffickers used their logistics expertise to distribute agricultural supplies to remote communities. In Tijuana, one-time enforcers provided security for domestic violence shelters. "Look at this." Colonel Torres highlighted a particular data set. "In areas where transformation has taken root, school enrollment has increased by 40%. Parents who once kept their children home out of fear are letting them dream again." Miguel had established what he called healing houses, community centers where medical care was combined with transformation support. "The physical and spiritual healing have to happen together," he explained. You can't transform the soul while leaving the body broken. Sarah's education program had evolved too. She now trained teachers across Mexico in what she called hope pedagogy, an approach that combined traditional education with community healing. Every classroom can become a transformation center, she insisted. Every lesson can reinforce the truth that change is possible. The afternoon brought new challenges. Intelligence indicated that remaining cartel forces were planning a coordinated effort to stop the transformation movement. But their tactics revealed their desperation. They were trying to fight an idea with bullets. "Let them come," Ramirez said calmly. "Every act of violence only proves why transformation is necessary. Every threat makes our message stronger." James gathered his core team to address the situation. The response they crafted wasn't based on confrontation, but on acceleration, intensifying their efforts to spread hope faster than fear could travel. "We don't fight darkness directly," he reminded them. "We simply create so much light that darkness has nowhere to take root." Las Guardianas presented their latest initiative, a program helping cartel families transition to legitimate businesses. They had discovered that many wives and mothers had been running sophisticated underground operations. Those same skills, redirected, were transforming local economies. "Yesterday I watched a woman who used to launder money teach financial literacy to street vendors," Elena shared. "Last week, a former smuggler's wife opened a legal import-export business. We're not just changing lives, we're changing the economic DNA of our communities." The command center received word of another kind of transformation taking place. Corrupt officials, inspired by the movement, were coming forward to confess and make amends. They called themselves Los Renacidos, the reborn. "It's like watching a fever break," Colonel Torres observed, "the sickness of corruption giving way to health." As evening approached, James led a strategy session addressing the next phase of expansion. The goal wasn't to fight cartels directly, but to create conditions where transformation became more appealing than violence. "Every person who chooses change," he explained, "becomes living proof that the cartel's power was always an illusion. We're not destroying their organization, and we're helping their people remember who they were meant to be." Miguel shared stories from his medical programs. Cartel doctors who now ran free clinics, enforcers who had become emergency medical technicians, runners who used their knowledge of back roads to reach isolated communities with medical care. "Yesterday," he told the gathering, "I watched a man who once tortured people for information hold the hand of a dying grandmother, comforting her in her last moments. That's not just transformation, that's redemption." Sarah's students had started an international correspondence program, connecting with schools in other cartel-affected regions. They shared their experiences of transformation, spreading hope across borders and languages. "These children," Sarah said, displaying their letters and artwork, "are growing up with a different story. Not one of inevitable violence, but of possible peace. They're learning that the most powerful choice anyone can make is to become something better than their circumstances." As night fell over Mexico City, the command center hummed with activity. Transformations were being monitored, support was being coordinated, and hope continued to spread. Because in the end, what had started in a school courtyard had become something more powerful than any cartel. It had become proof that within every heart, no matter how hardened, a light waits to shine. 2 months into the transformation movement, James Mitchell stood before an unlikely gathering at the United Nations headquarters in New York. Representatives from countries plagued by organized crime had come to learn about what international media had dubbed the Mitchell Doctrine, the radical idea that the best way to fight darkness wasn't with more darkness, but with intentional, systematic light. Traditional thinking suggests that to defeat an enemy, you must become stronger than their strength, James began. We discovered something different in San Miguel, that true victory comes not from overpowering darkness, but from awakening the light within it. The evidence was undeniable. Satellite imagery showed vast changes in former cartel territories. Not just the absence of violence, but the presence of something new. Community gardens had replaced drug farms. Medical clinics operated where torture houses once stood. Schools flourished in neighborhoods once ruled by fear. Sarah, presenting the educational impact data, revealed something extraordinary. In transformed communities, we're seeing a 90% decrease in youth recruitment to criminal organizations, not through enforcement or prevention programs, but because young people are witnessing living proof that different choices are possible. Miguel, now directing international medical training programs, shared the healthcare revolution taking place. Former cartel doctors aren't just treating wounds anymore. They're pioneering trauma-informed care that addresses both physical and spiritual healing. They understand the wounds of violence better than anyone because they once inflicted them. A delegation from Colombia approached with an urgent request. They faced a similar situation: entrenched criminal organizations, generational violence, seemingly hopeless cycles. But they had seen something in the transformation movement that gave them hope. The key, James explained to them, is understanding that every person, no matter how far they've fallen, carries within them a memory of light. Our job isn't to defeat them, but to help them remember who they were meant to be. Ramirez, presenting security data, revealed a pattern that challenged conventional wisdom. In areas where we focus on transformation rather than confrontation, we see an 85% decrease in retaliatory violence. The cycle breaks, not because we're stronger, but because we're offering a better alternative to strength. Elena and Las Guardianas had expanded their influence across borders, creating an international network of support for families seeking transformation. We discovered something powerful, Elena told the assembly. When you help a mother see her, you'll become a healer instead of a killer. You're not just saving one life, you're changing the future. The afternoon session brought surprising testimony from transformed cartel members who now led community renewal projects. One former assassin who had become a youth counselor shared a profound insight. "I was the most feared killer in my region," he admitted, "but now I understand. My reputation for violence wasn't power, it was a prison. Real power is seeing the kids I once would have recruited choosing to become doctors, teachers, builders instead." Colonel Torres presented law enforcement data that defied conventional metrics. "We're not just seeing a reduction in crime," he explained. "We're seeing entire criminal infrastructures being repurposed for community good. Former money laundering networks now fund microloans for small businesses. Smuggling routes carry medical supplies to remote areas. But the most compelling evidence came from the children. Sarah shared video messages from students in transformed communities, their words cutting through political rhetoric to the heart of what was really happening. "My father used to come home with blood on his hands," one young girl testified. "Now he comes home with paint on them because he teaches art to kids who used to be afraid to dream. He says it's never too late to choose beauty over pain." The United Nations session was interrupted by breaking news. One of the largest remaining cartel leaders had publicly announced his intention to seek transformation. Not from fear or force, but because his own daughter, inspired by the movement, had helped him see the possibility of redemption. "This is how real change happens," James explained to the astounded delegates, "not through grand gestures or dramatic confrontations, but through countless small awakenings, one heart at a time." Miguel shared the latest innovations from his medical programs. Former cartel chemists who once manufactured drugs were now developing trauma treatment protocols. Ex-enforcers with intimate knowledge of torture methods were pioneering new approaches to pain management and psychological healing. "Yesterday," he reported, "I watched a man who once broke bodies for a living spend hours delicately suturing a child's wound, tears streaming down his face as he realized he could heal what he once would have destroyed." Sarah's education initiative had evolved into a global movement. Schools across the world were implementing what she called transformation-informed teaching, an approach that recognized every student's capacity for positive change, regardless of their background. "We're not just teaching subjects," she explained, "we're teaching possibility. Every lesson carries the subtle message that it's never too late to become something better than your past." Las Guardianas presented their latest project, a series of community centers specifically designed to help women transition from supporting roles in criminal organizations to leadership positions in legitimate enterprises. "We discovered something powerful," Elena shared. "Many of these women were already running complex operations, managing finances, coordinating logistics, maintaining networks. Those same skills, redirected toward community good, become incredible forces for positive change." The afternoon brought a demonstration of the Guardian Network's technological innovations. Former cartel hackers, working alongside international cybersecurity experts, had developed systems to protect transformation initiatives while helping others find their way to redemption. The same skills that once breached security now maintain it, one former hacker explained. "The expertise that once spread fear now spreads hope. The transformation isn't in the technology, it's in how we choose to use it." James received word that transformation movements were spontaneously emerging in unexpected places, not just in areas affected by organized crime, but in communities dealing with different forms of systemic violence. "Because the fundamental truth we discovered," he told the assembly, "isn't just about fighting cartels. It's about understanding that the most powerful force for change isn't external pressure, but internal awakening." As evening approached, the United Nations session concluded with an unprecedented resolution. The transformation movement would receive international support and recognition, not as a law enforcement initiative, but as a humanitarian movement demonstrating a new way to heal communities torn by violence. "But remember," James cautioned as the session ended, "you can't impose transformation. You can only create conditions where it becomes possible and support those who choose it. The power isn't in the program, it's in the proof that change is possible." The delegates departed with more than plans and protocols. They carried with them a new understanding of what victory really means, not the defeat of an enemy, but the transformation of adversaries into allies in building a better world. Back in the command center, Sarah watched real-time updates from transformation initiatives spreading across the globe. "Look at this," she told her father, pointing to the data. "Every story of change becomes a seed for more change. Every transformation becomes proof that something better is possible." James nodded, understanding that what had started in a school courtyard had become something larger than himself, larger than any single movement or mission. It had become living proof of humanity's capacity for redemption, a testament to the truth that within every heart, no matter how hardened by darkness, a light waits to shine. 3 months after the initial confrontation in San Miguel, James Mitchell returned to where it all began, the school courtyard that had sparked a global transformation. But this time, he wasn't alone. Walking beside him was someone unexpected. El Coyote himself, recently released from federal custody under a groundbreaking rehabilitation program. "Strange," El Coyote remarked, looking at the flourishing garden that had replaced the scene of their confrontation. "I came here to take something. Instead, I lost everything. And in losing everything, I found something I never knew I was missing." The former cartel leader had undergone his own remarkable transformation. In custody, he had watched the movement he once fought spread across the continent, watched his former soldiers become healers, protectors, builders. Something in him had finally broken, not his spirit, but the walls he'd built around it. "You know what finally reached me?" he told James as they walked. "Not the defeats or the losses. It was the letters. My men, writing to me about their transformations. The enforcer who now runs a youth center, the smuggler teaching business skills to former addicts. They weren't just changing, they were becoming who they were meant to be before the cartel twisted them." Sarah joined them, carrying a thick folder of new transformation requests. The movement had evolved beyond their wildest expectations, taking forms they never anticipated. Former cartel members weren't just leaving their old lives. They were becoming innovators in positive change. "Look at this," she showed them. "Miguel's medical program has developed new trauma treatment protocols that are being adopted by hospitals worldwide. Ramirez's security strategies are being taught at international law enforcement academies. The transformed are becoming transformers." The school itself had become something extraordinary, a living laboratory of transformation. In one classroom, a former cartel accountant taught financial literacy to small business owners. In another, an ex-enforcer led conflict resolution workshops. The skills that once served darkness had been completely redirected toward light. "But here's what's truly remarkable," Sarah continued. "The transformation isn't just affecting individuals, it's changing entire systems. Communities that once competed in violence now compete in positive innovation. Neighborhoods once divided by fear are united in purpose." Colonel Torres arrived with unprecedented news. The last major cartel in the region had reached out, not to negotiate or threaten, but to explore transformation. Their leader had seen something that shook him to his core. His own son, inspired by the movement, secretly volunteering at one of Miguel's medical clinics. "You see," James explained to the gathered observers, "fear can maintain control for a time, but it can't compete with the power of witnessed transformation. Every person who changes becomes living proof that change is possible." Elena and Las Guardianas had made their own breakthrough. They discovered that many women in cartel families had been secret forces for positive change all along, quietly trying to balance the violence of their men with small acts of kindness and community support. We didn't have to teach them transformation, Elena explained. We just had to show them they weren't alone, that their hidden hopes for a better way could finally emerge into the light. Miguel's medical network had expanded beyond anything they'd imagined. Former cartel doctors weren't just providing care, they were pioneering new approaches to community healing that combined physical, psychological, and social recovery. Yesterday, he shared, I watched a man who once tortured people for information spend hours counseling a young gang member, helping him understand that strength doesn't have to mean violence. The healed become healers. That's the miracle we're witnessing. But the most profound changes were visible in the smallest details. The way former enemies now worked side by side in community projects. The sound of children playing freely in streets once ruled by fear. The sight of transformed cartel members mentoring youth away from the paths they once walked. Look there, El Coyote pointed to a group of teenagers in the school courtyard. 3 months ago, they would have been our next recruits. Now they're learning to be emergency medical technicians. The cycle isn't just broken, it's been completely redirected. James received word the transformation centers were opening across Latin America, each adapting the core principles to their local needs. But they weren't being run by outside experts or government agencies. They were being led by transformed cartel members who understood both the pull of darkness and the power of light. Because authentic transformation, he explained to a group of international observers, can't be imposed from outside. It has to grow from within, sparked by living proof that another way is possible. Sarah's education programs had evolved into something she called healing literacy, teaching not just academic subjects, but the fundamental skills of personal and community transformation. Her methods were being adopted by schools worldwide, creating new generations of changemakers. We're not just teaching them what to learn, she explained, but how to unlearn the limitations fear places on their dreams. Ramirez, who had become a leading strategist in the global transformation movement, shared a profound insight from his work. We used to think power came from making people fear us. Now we understand. Real power is helping people overcome their fears, helping them remember their own light. The afternoon brought a remarkable scene. Former cartel members, who had once been bitter enemies, gathered in the school gymnasium to share their transformation stories with youth at risk of being recruited by remaining criminal organizations. The power wasn't just in their words, but in the living proof they represented. I used to think being feared meant being respected, one former enforcer told the gathering. Now I understand. Fear is just respect's shadow. Real respect comes from helping others find their strength, not from proving your own. El Coyote, listening to these testimonies, shook his head in wonder. We fought so hard to maintain control through fear, he reflected. But look at what's happening now. People are choosing transformation not because they're afraid, but because they're inspired. The transformation had begun, affecting unexpected areas. Business leaders, inspired by the movement, were creating programs to hire and support transformed cartel members. Universities were offering scholarships to former criminals committed to positive change. Communities were finding creative ways to integrate and support those choosing a new path. This is how real change sustains itself, James explained. Not through external pressure or enforcement, but through communities recognizing that transformation serves everyone's interests. As evening approached, they gathered in the school courtyard for a special ceremony. The garden, now in full bloom, had become a living symbol of transformation. Each plant represented someone who had chosen change, their stories written on small plaques that visitors could read and reflect upon. But the real garden, James told the assembled group, isn't in these plants. It's in the hearts that have remembered how to grow toward light instead of surviving in darkness. Miguel shared news from his medical network. Former cartel members who had completed their medical training were now opening clinics in areas still struggling with violence, creating new outposts of hope in places that needed it most. They understand something crucial, he explained. Transformation isn't just about leaving darkness behind, it's about bringing light to where darkness still rules. Sarah's students had started an international journal of transformation stories, sharing experiences and insights across borders and languages. Their simple accounts of witnessed change were proving more powerful than any formal program or policy. Because in the end, she told her father as they watched the sun set over San Miguel, transformation isn't a program or a policy. It's a possibility that becomes visible when someone proves it's real. The day ended with a new beginning. Word arrived that another major cartel leader had chosen transformation, inspired not by force or fear, but by witnessing the profound changes in his former rivals. The cycle of violence wasn't just being broken, it was being transformed into a cycle of positive change. This is just the beginning, James told the gathered observers as night fell over San Miguel. Because once people understand that transformation is possible, they begin to see possibilities everywhere, and in that recognition, the real miracle begins. 6 months after the confrontation that changed San Miguel, James Mitchell stood before a unique graduation ceremony at the transformed International School. But these weren't ordinary graduates. They were the first class of what had become known as transformation leaders, former cartel members who had not only changed their own lives, but had become catalysts for change in others. When we started this journey, James addressed the gathering, people said transformation was impossible, that violence was too deeply rooted, that fear was too powerful. Today, you stand as living proof that the impossible becomes possible when someone shows the way. The graduates represented something unprecedented in the history of conflict resolution. A former cartel assassin who now ran trauma recovery programs, a drug lord's chief financial officer who had created a microfinance network for community development, enforcers who had become counselors, traffickers who had become teachers. Miguel stepped forward to share remarkable statistics from the medical transformation program. In 6 months, our graduated medical teams have treated over 50,000 patients in areas that never had access to healthcare. But more importantly, every healing touch becomes a moment of transformation, proof that hands once used to harm can learn to heal. Sarah's education initiative had evolved into what scholars were calling the Phoenix Protocol, a comprehensive approach to transforming conflict zones through education, empowerment, and witness change. Schools across the world were adopting her methods, creating new generations of transformation leaders. But the real breakthrough, she explained, isn't in the methodology. It's in the moment when someone realizes they're not trapped by their past, that transformation isn't just possible, it's their natural state. The ceremony was interrupted by unprecedented news. The last major cartel in Central America had announced its intention to undergo complete transformation, not because of military pressure or law enforcement action, but because they had witnessed something more powerful than fear, the joy of their transformed rivals. You know what reached them? El Coyote, now a senior advisor in the transformation program, shared with the gathering. It wasn't our successes or their losses. It was seeing their own children choose different paths, watching their communities embrace those who had changed. Colonel Torres arrived with data that challenged everything experts thought they knew about fighting organized crime. In regions where transformation had taken root, violence hadn't just decreased, it had been replaced by unprecedented levels of community innovation and development. Look at these numbers, he highlighted. Former cartel territories aren't just peaceful, they're thriving. Areas once known for violence are becoming centers of social innovation, economic growth, and cultural revival. Elena and Las Guardianas presented their latest initiative, a network of transformation incubators where former cartel families helped others navigate the journey from fear to hope. Their approach wasn't based on programs or policies, but on the power of witnessed change. Yesterday, Elena shared, I watched a woman who once helped run cartel operations spend hours mentoring young girls away from the life she once lived. Her tears weren't of regret, but of joy at finally being able to protect what she once helped destroy. The graduation ceremony continued with something unprecedented, the unveiling of the Transformation Archive. Former cartel members had documented their journeys not just through words, but through art, music, and community projects that showed the many faces of positive change. Each story here, James explained to international observers, represents not just one person's transformation, but the ripple effect they created. Every changed life becomes a catalyst for more change. Miguel's medical network had made a groundbreaking discovery. They found that when former cartel members participated in healing others, their own trauma recovery accelerated dramatically. The act of helping others heal became a powerful force for personal transformation. We're not just treating physical wounds, he explained. We're healing the wounds in the soul that led people to violence in the first place. And in that healing, they discover their true calling. Sarah shared a powerful moment from her classroom. A former cartel enforcer, now studying to become a teacher, had broken down while reading to children. I used to make kids fear me, he admitted. Now they run to hug me when I enter the room. That's when I understood what real power feels like. The transformation had begun affecting areas far beyond cartel violence. Communities were applying the principles to address other forms of conflict and social challenges. The power of witness change was proving effective in situations ranging from gang intervention to reconciliation in post-conflict zones. Because the fundamental truth we discovered, James explained, isn't just about fighting cartels. It's about understanding that within every person, no matter how far they've fallen, there remains a spark of light waiting to be rekindled. Ramirez, who had become a leading voice in the transformation movement, shared a profound insight from his work with former rivals. We used to think strength meant never changing, never showing weakness. Now we understand real strength is having the courage to change, to become something better than your past. The ceremony included a unique ritual. Each graduate planted a tree in what had become known as the Forest of Transformation. But these weren't ordinary trees. Each one was surrounded by plaques sharing the stories of lives changed through that graduate's influence. These trees, James explained, represent something powerful. They show that transformation isn't just about personal change. It's about creating shade under which others can find their way to light. El Coyote, standing before his own tree, shared something unexpected. You know what the hardest part of transformation was? Not giving up power or facing consequences. It was realizing that everything I thought made me strong was actually making me weak. Real strength was waiting on the other side of surrender. The afternoon brought news that international organizations were adopting the transformation model for global peacekeeping initiatives. What had started in a school courtyard had become a new paradigm for addressing conflict worldwide. But remember, James cautioned the observers, you can't replicate transformation through programs alone. You have to create conditions where people can witness change, where they can see living proof that another way is possible. Sarah's students had started something remarkable, a worldwide network of transformation witnesses who documented and shared stories of positive change. Their accounts, told through social media and community gatherings, were proving more powerful than any formal intervention. Because in the end, she explained, transformation isn't about techniques or programs. It's about showing people what's possible when we choose to become something better than our circumstances. As evening approached, the graduates gathered for a final ceremony. Each one lit a candle, but instead of keeping the flame, they used it to light someone else's candle, creating a growing circle of light in the gathering darkness. This is how transformation really works, James told them. Not through grand gestures or dramatic confrontations, but through countless small acts of passing light from one life to another until darkness has nowhere left to hide. The day ended with a new beginning. Word arrived that communities across the globe were requesting guidance in starting their own transformation initiatives. The movement that began with one father protecting his daughter had become a worldwide force for positive change. But the real miracle, James told the gathering as night fell, isn't in how far this has spread. It's in how deep it has grown. In the countless hearts that have remembered their capacity for light, in the thousands of lives that prove transformation isn't just possible, it's our natural state when we dare to choose it. 1 year after the confrontation that changed San Miguel, James Mitchell stood in the United Nations General Assembly, but he wasn't alone. Beside him stood Sarah, Miguel, El Coyote, and representatives from transformed communities across the globe. They had come to share not just a story of success, but a fundamental truth about human nature that had been revealed through their journey. When we began, James addressed the assembly, we thought we were fighting a cartel. What we discovered was that we were really fighting a myth. The myth that people cannot change, that violence is inevitable, that fear is stronger than hope. Today, we stand before you with living proof that transformation isn't just possible. It's the natural state of the human heart when given the chance to remember its light. The evidence was undeniable. Satellite imagery showed former cartel territories transformed into thriving communities. Crime statistics revealed unprecedented drops in violence. But the most compelling proof came in the form of thousands of personal stories, lives not just changed, but completely transformed. Miguel stepped forward to share the latest medical data. Our transformed medical teams have now treated over 1 million patients. But here's what's remarkable. In areas where healing services are provided by former cartel members, we see a 95% drop in new recruitment to criminal organizations. People aren't just being healed physically, they're witnessing the possibility of transformation. Sarah presented the educational impact across continents. The Phoenix Protocol had been adopted by schools in over 50 countries, creating new generations of transformation leaders. But the real breakthrough, she explained, isn't in the curriculum. It's in the moment when a child realizes that their future isn't determined by their past, that transformation is always possible. El Coyote, once the most feared cartel leader in Mexico, now stood as living proof of the movement's power. "I commanded thousands through fear," he told the assembly. "Now I lead by example, showing that if someone like me can change, anyone can. True power isn't in making people fear you. It's in helping them overcome their fears." The presentation was interrupted by breaking news. The last major criminal organization in Central America had announced its complete transformation. Not through force or negotiation, but through what they called the contagion of hope, witnessing the joy and purpose their transformed rivals had found. Colonel Torres presented data that challenged everything experts thought they knew about fighting organized crime. In regions where transformation has taken root, we're not just seeing the absence of violence, we're seeing the presence of something extraordinary. Former cartel territories are becoming centers of social innovation, economic growth, and cultural renaissance. Elena and Las Guardianas shared their latest initiative, a worldwide network of transformation sanctuaries where those seeking change could find support, guidance, and living proof that another way was possible. "Yesterday," Elena shared, "I watched a woman who once ordered executions spend hours teaching young mothers how to nurture hope in their children. That's the miracle we're witnessing. Not just the end of violence, but the birth of new possibilities." The United Nations session included something unprecedented, a direct satellite link to transformation centers across the globe. On screens, around the assembly hall, former criminals shared their stories of change, each one a testament to the human capacity for redemption. "Look closely," James told the gathered leaders. "These aren't just stories of individual change. They're proof that when we create conditions where transformation is possible, it becomes probable. When we show people a better way, they choose it not out of fear, but out of recognition of their own true nature." Miguel's medical network had made a groundbreaking discovery. They found that communities where former cartel members led healing initiatives showed unprecedented rates of recovery from generational trauma. "We're not just healing bodies," he explained. "We're healing the wounds that led to violence in the first place." Sarah shared the results of a global study on the impact of witnessed transformation. In areas where former criminals had become community leaders, youth violence had dropped by over 90%. "Children naturally move toward light," she explained. "When we show them that change is possible, they embrace it with their whole hearts." The assembly watched in wonder as live feeds showed transformed cartel territories. Gardens bloomed where drug labs once stood. Schools operated in former torture houses. Community centers buzzed with activity in neighborhoods once ruled by fear. But the most remarkable changes were in the faces of the people, the light in their eyes, the hope in their expressions, the purpose in their movements. "This is what victory really looks like," James explained. "Not the defeat of an enemy, but the transformation of adversaries into allies in building a better world." Every person who changes becomes living proof that change is possible, creating a cascade effect that no force can stop. Ramirez, now a leading strategist in global transformation initiatives, shared a powerful insight. We used to think strength was about being feared. Now we understand real strength is having the courage to show others the way back to their own light. The presentation included something powerful, a worldwide network of transformation. Witnesses who documented and shared stories of positive change. Their accounts, told through every available medium, were proving more effective than any military intervention or law enforcement action. Because, in the end, Sarah explained, transformation isn't about programs or policies. It's about showing people what's possible when we dare to become something better than our circumstances. As the day progressed, news arrived of more communities requesting transformation support. The movement that began in a school courtyard had become a global force for positive change, spreading not through force, but through the power of witnessed transformation. But remember, James cautioned the assembly, you can't mandate transformation. You can only create conditions where it becomes possible and support those who choose it. The power isn't in the program, it's in the proof that change is possible. The session concluded with something unprecedented. Representatives from former rival cartels, now transformed into community leaders, shared their visions for the future. Their plans weren't just about preventing violence, they were about creating such powerful positive alternatives that violence would lose its appeal. Look at what's happening, El Coyote observed. We're not just ending the old way. We're creating something entirely new. Communities once divided by fear are now united in purpose. People who once fought over territory now compete to create the most positive impact. As evening approached, the assembly witnessed a final demonstration of the movement's power. On screens around the hall, thousands of candles were lit simultaneously across transformed territories, each flame representing a life changed, a path redirected, a future reclaimed from darkness. This is how transformation really works, James concluded, not through grand gestures or dramatic confrontations, but through countless small acts of choosing light over darkness, hope over fear, love over hate. Each transformed life becomes a beacon, showing others the way home to their own hearts. The day ended with a new beginning. Word arrived that the United Nations would establish a permanent office of transformation support, dedicated to spreading these principles worldwide. What had started with one father protecting his daughter had become a global movement for positive change. But the real miracle, James told the assembly as the session concluded, isn't in how far this has spread. It's in how deeply it has revealed the truth about human nature, that within every heart, no matter how hardened by darkness, a light waits to shine. Our job isn't to fight darkness, but to create so much light that darkness has nowhere to take root. As night fell over New York, the lights in the United Nations building burned bright, a beacon of hope for a world learning that the most powerful force for change isn't violence or fear, but the courageous choice to become something better than what we were. The story that began in a school courtyard had become something more, living proof that transformation isn't just possible, it's our natural state when we dare to choose it. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.